At 68, Frank Lewis never sought the spotlight. As a black bus driver on Route 19, he moved through his days with quiet dignity, ferrying passengers across the city. He did his job, simple and steady. That is, until one day, when he did the unthinkable. He stood up for a mother and her child, enduring humiliation at the hands of Officer Blake Murdoch. Frank found himself slammed to the pavement, handcuffed, while bystanders filmed in shock. To the police, it was just another moment. Another elderly man put in his place. But they were catastrophically wrong. The footage was deleted, but not for long. It surfaced and traveled far, reaching a Montana wilderness where Frank's son, Caleb Lewis, watched his father's blood stain the concrete. A decorated Green Beret sniper, Caleb had long since disappeared into the shadows, a ghost in the wind. He had seen too many people die, too many things lost, but now he would fight for his father. Because some men you can humiliate without consequence. But Frank Lewis? He was not one of them. As Frank sat alone on his porch that evening, miles away, Caleb meticulously prepared for his return. He could feel the pull of homecoming, the promise of a reckoning. His father's humiliation was not the end, it was only the beginning. The glow of an old bedside lamp illuminated Frank's weathered face as he rose before the sun, the familiar ache of his body reminding him that age had arrived. But his internal clock, that never faltered. 4:30 a.m., the same time it had been in Vietnam, the same as his 30 years driving buses. In his small, modest two-bedroom house, photos of his late wife Evelyn smiled at him from the walls. He touched one frame gently, a small moment of connection before heading to the kitchen. "Morning, Evelyn," he whispered softly, greeting her photo as he had every morning for the last decade. A simple breakfast followed, instant oatmeal and black coffee. But the ritual mattered. Afterward, he buttoned his Metro Transit uniform, shirt with precision. The collar was frayed, the embroidered name patch worn, but Frank kept it clean. He respected the uniform. It was something he had learned in the army, a lesson he never forgot. As he stepped out onto the front porch, his thermos in hand, he noticed Rico Martinez, the 19-year-old mechanic next door, working under the hood of an old Chevy. "Morning, Mr. Lewis. Early as always," Rico said with a smile. Frank chuckled. "That junker giving you trouble again?" "Nothing I can't handle. Just needs some love, like your bus." "Route 19's a lady who knows what she wants," Rico replied, wiping his hands on a rag. Frank nodded, a smile pulling at his stern face. "You staying out of trouble?" Rico's smile dimmed just slightly. "I applied for that apprenticeship at Wilson's auto shop yesterday. You'll get it. Best damn mechanic I've ever seen," Frank said with certainty. "Thanks, Mr. Lewis. That means a lot coming from you." Frank nodded, watching the boy's smile return. He'd been keeping an eye on Rico since the boy's father had been deported 3 years ago. Quietly. No fuss. Just as neighbors should. "Got to roll," Frank said, glancing at his watch. "Bus won't drive itself." As he walked to the transit depot, he thought of his bus and the people he'd meet. Every day, he navigated through the changing neighborhoods of Route 19. He saw the city's transformation, old family businesses replaced by artisanal coffee shops, long-time residents displaced by rising rents. The morning crowds, diverse and disconnected, represented the divide of the city. By 9:30 a.m., the bus carried them all. Mothers with small children, teenagers with headphones, business people glued to their phones, elderly passengers clutching shopping bags. Frank kept the peace with quiet authority. He was their thread, holding them all together as a community. But one morning, a young man boarded who immediately set Frank on edge. Tall, wiry, with a hard look in his eyes. Trent Wilson. He swayed slightly, the faint smell of alcohol lingering in the air. Frank spoke softly. "Morning, sir. Please find a seat." Trent scowled but moved down the aisle. Frank watched through the mirror as passengers subtly shifted away from him. Then, a young Latina woman holding a toddler took a seat near the middle. Trent chose the seat right behind her. For several blocks, all seemed calm. Then, Frank heard it, a low mutter. Just loud enough to be heard, but not enough to draw attention. "Taking all the jobs, go back to where you came from." Frank's eyes flicked to the mirror again. The young mother's arms tightened around her child. Her face remained composed, but Frank could see the fear in her eyes. The muttering grew louder. "Hey, I'm talking to you, lady. Don't you understand English?" Frank pulled the bus over at the next stop, his hand steady on the wheel. He knew this moment. He had been here before. But this time, it would be different. He stepped to the aisle and addressed Trent calmly. "Sir, I need you to keep your voice down. We have a sleeping child here." Trent stood, towering over the mother and child. "Mind your own business, old man. I paid my fare." Frank's voice remained steady, but his gaze hardened. "You did, and that buys you a seat, not the right to disturb others. Please keep it down, or you'll need to step off at the next stop." "Threatening me?" Trent's voice rose, and the toddler began crying. Frank didn't flinch. "No threats, just policy. This is a public bus. Everyone has the right to ride in peace." Frank didn't see it, but a passenger had quietly made a phone call. "There's a situation on the number 19 bus," the voice said urgently. "A black man is threatening people. The police were on their way." The insults began as a whisper, just loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. "Taking all the jobs. Go back to where you came from." Frank Lewis watched through the mirror. The young Latina mother stared straight ahead, clutching her sleeping toddler. Her face was calm, but her arms had tightened around the child. Frank saw the fear in her eyes. Other passengers looked away, suddenly fascinated by their phones or the view outside. The muttering behind her grew louder. "Hey, I'm talking to you, lady. Do you understand English?" Frank eased the bus to a stop. No one waited to board. He pulled the brake and stood up. His voice was calm, but it carried strength. "Sir," Frank said, "we have a sleeping child here. I need you to lower your voice." The man, later identified as Trent Wilson, narrowed his eyes. "Mind your own business, old man. I paid my fare." "You did," Frank replied evenly. "And that fare buys transportation, not the right to intimidate other passengers. Please, keep your voice down, or exit at the next stop." "You threatening me?" Trent stood suddenly, looming over the mother and her child. The baby stirred and began to cry. Frank's voice did not waver. "No threats, just rules. Everyone deserves peace on this bus." In the back, a passenger pulled out their phone, speaking in a hushed, urgent voice. "Yeah. There's a situation on the 19, a black man, threatening people, aggressive, Westfield and Monroe." Frank stepped closer to Trent, but kept a respectful distance. "Sir, I need you to get off the bus." "Like hell I will," Trent shouted, the toddler now crying fully. Frank stayed calm. "Please, I do not want trouble. Step off now." An older man in a business suit rose. "Listen to the driver, buddy. Just go cool off somewhere else." Trent glared one last time, then stormed toward the exit. "I'm filing a complaint." "That's your right," Frank said, returning to his seat. As Trent left, Frank looked toward the mother. "Are you all right, Mom?" She nodded, gently rocking her child. "Thank you," she whispered. Frank pulled the bus back onto the road, unaware the worst was yet to come. 2 stops later, a police cruiser pulled up with flashing lights. Frank sighed. Probably paperwork, a delay, nothing serious. He opened the door, expecting questions about the earlier incident. Instead, Officer Blake Murdoch stormed up the steps, hand on his gun. His face was tight with adrenaline. "Driver, step off the vehicle now," he barked. Frank blinked, confused. "Officer, is there a problem? I had a disruptive passenger earlier, but he left. Hands where I can see them. Exit the vehicle immediately." Behind him, Officer Dana Rivas appeared. Her expression was tense, but less aggressive. "Sir, please comply," she said firmly. Frank raised his hands slowly. "I am complying. Let me just secure the bus first." "Now!" Murdoch shouted. Frank carefully shut off the engine. Passengers watched, in stunned silence as he walked toward the door. The moment he stepped onto the sidewalk, Murdoch grabbed him and slammed him face first against the bus. "Officer, what is this?" Frank gasped, the metal biting into his cheek. "We got reports of a hostile black male threatening passengers," Murdoch growled, snapping on handcuffs. "Stop resisting!" "I am not resisting," Frank cried, panic rising in his chest. "I am the driver." Inside the bus, passengers pressed against the windows. Some shouted in protest. The young mother burst from the doors. "He's the driver," she cried. "He protected us." Murdoch ignored her. Stay back, Mom. This is police business. Frank's lip bled. Murdoch forced him to the ground, driving, a knee into his back. A teenage boy across the street live-streamed the scene. Voices rose. He did nothing wrong. That's the driver, you idiots. Officer Rivas looked around. Blake. The witnesses are saying he is the driver. I think we— Shut up and secure the scene, Murdoch snapped. Frank managed to whisper to the teen filming. Tell Rico what happened, before being shoved into the back of the cruiser. Hours later, bruised and bloodied, Frank was released with no apology, no charges. Just a cold. You're free to go. That night, Frank sat on his porch in silence. He had not called anyone, not even reported the incident to his supervisors. He just called in sick for the next day and watched the dark settle over the neighborhood. Miles away, in a remote Montana cabin, Caleb Lewis, the ghost his enemies had forgotten, watched a video on his screen. It showed his father's face, bloodied and pressed against the concrete. His expression did not change, but his hands stopped cleaning the rifle. Caleb Lewis was coming home, and justice was coming with him. The video played on a dim screen deep in Montana wilderness. A teenager's livestream, once scrubbed from social media, now mirrored on a hidden dark web link. On screen, Frank Lewis's face was pressed into pavement, blood trailing from his mouth. Caleb Lewis, his estranged son, paused the video on that frame. His expression remained blank, but his hand froze on the rifle he had been cleaning. Caleb was not just any soldier. He was the most lethal sniper in his Green Beret unit's history, the kind of man whose fury was not loud, but cold, controlled, dangerous. He reached for his phone. It had been 4 years since he last dialed this number. 3 rings. Then a voice. Cool. Cautious. Melanie Parker. It's me, Caleb said. Silence, stretched, then a shift in her tone. I thought we agreed never again. They laid hands on my father. What happened? As Caleb spoke, he moved through his cabin with methodical precision, packing surveillance gear, weapons, forged IDs, tools for a ghost who never really stopped fighting. The city's changed, Melanie said after he finished. Holloway runs half of it now with private security. Vanguard Shield. They're turning cops into soldiers. Good, Caleb replied coldly. Then they will understand what real military tactics look like. Caleb, I am not asking for permission, Mel. Just letting you know, I am coming. A pause. Then a sigh. Your father needs more than a son with a sniper rifle. I know. That is why I called you first. 3 days later, Frank Lewis sat in the sterile lobby of the police precinct. His bruises had deepened into a dark purple, his lips still swollen. He waited patiently at the front desk, ignored by the young officer behind the computer. I would like to file a complaint, Frank said quietly. The officer did not look up. Fill out this form. Frank spent 30 careful minutes detailing the incident. When he returned the form, the officer glanced at it once and tossed it into a tray. When might I hear something? Frank asked. The officer finally met his eyes. Old-timer, you really want advice? Let it go. People who push this kind of thing usually regret it. Frank stood still, decades of dignity straightening his spine despite the ache in his ribs. I just want it on record. It is on record. Now move along. People with real problems are waiting. Frank stepped out into the city, his pace slow, his body tired. He waited at the bus stop, now a passenger instead of the driver. Across the street, a black SUV sat quietly. Inside, behind polarized glass, someone was watching. Elsewhere, Officer Dana Rivas sat alone in her parked car, hands hovering over a voice recorder and a thick folder of copied internal reports. She had been at the precinct late again. Watching. Listening. Frank Lewis's arrest had not been the first time Murdoch had escalated things without reason. Not even close. But it was the first time Dana had pressed record. She had captured it all. Murdoch in the break room, laughing, taught the old man a lesson. Captain Holloway's voice responding with a smirk. We'll adjust the report. Her phone buzzed. A text from Murdoch. Drinks tonight. Team building. Captain's orders. She stared at the message, then at the folder beside her. Was she protecting herself? or finally finding the courage to protect someone else. In a quiet downtown cafe, Melanie Parker sat across from 22-year-old Nina Holloway, the captain's daughter, a criminal justice student, and a community activist. "Your father's contracts are dangerous," Melanie said. "Private companies acting as police with no oversight." "I know," Nina said. She pushed her dark hair behind her ear. "That is why I agreed to talk. He thinks I do not notice, but I do." She leaned in. "People are scared, phones confiscated, videos erased, like what happened to that bus driver, Frank Lewis." "You know about that?" Melanie asked. "Only his name. Heard it at a town hall. Was that Murdoch?" Melanie nodded. "His golden boy. The footage vanished, but not all of it." Nina's eyes narrowed. "My friend works IT. He says there is a shadow server, where they hide it all." They spoke in hushed tones, unaware of the man at the corner table, baseball cap low, coffee untouched, listening. That night, Frank sat on his porch, the ache in his hull, bones dulled only slightly by tea. The street was quiet, families behind closed doors, and his mind wandered back, not to the soldier his son had become, but to the boy he once was, the one who drew birds and collected rocks, the one who came home from war and never truly came back. Then Caleb vanished. No goodbye, no explanation. Frank had buried the pain, but now everything was shifting and the world was watching. Frank Lewis nearly missed the white envelope on his doorstep. It had no stamp, no return address, just his name, written in precise, familiar handwriting. His hands trembled as he opened it. One line, simple and clear. "You do not have to stand alone anymore. See." For the first time since the bus incident, Frank Lewis wept. Miles away in a dim motel room, Caleb Lewis worked in silence. The room looked like a miniature war zone. Surveillance monitors glowed faintly. 3 scrambled phones sat on the desk. A laptop ran behind a VPN. Maps of the city were pinned to the wall, circles around key targets: the precinct, Murdoch's house, Holloway's office, Frank's home. On the bed lay a tactical vest, civilian clothing, and a hard-shell case filled with elite-level equipment few outside special forces had ever handled. Caleb's movements were quiet, surgical. This was no mission overseas. The battlefield was now personal. His phone buzzed. "She's interested. Meeting tomorrow. Ghost is in. Play." Caleb's jaw tightened. Ghost. The man who had run Caleb's Black Ops missions. A name spoken only in whispers. If he was involved, this war was deeper than personal revenge. That night, Caleb sat parked outside Officer Dana Rivas's apartment, watching her through her living room window. She paced nervously, phone to her ear, voice rising with emotion. He could not hear her words, but her body language told him what he needed. She was scared, but not gone, not yet. She was a potential ally, if he could reach her before fear closed the door. Tomorrow, he would make his first move. Just before dawn, Officer Dana Rivas stepped out of her apartment, keys between her fingers, eyes sharp from habit. She did not see the figure watching from a nearby car. She did not know her vehicle had already been accessed. A small device now sat beneath her dashboard. The moment she started the engine, her radio cut out. Static burst. Then silence. She frowned, adjusted the dial, kept driving. Halfway to the precinct, her phone rang. "Officer Rivas," she answered. The voice on the line was distorted, robotic. "He will fall. You still have time to choose a side." Dana gasped. "Who is this?" The call ended. She pulled over, hands shaking, and redialed. The number did not exist. The rest of the drive, she watched her mirrors constantly. The feeling of being watched clung to her skin like a second uniform. Across the city, Officer Blake Murdoch rolled through a mostly black neighborhood in his cruiser. He passed workers at bus stops, kids on their way to school. His radio crackled. Unit 237, gang graffiti reported on the south wall of Anderson Elementary. Possible gang activity in progress. Murdoch responded quickly, excited. These calls meant arrests, and his numbers were down this month. He arrived at the school. The wall had been freshly painted with a crude gang symbol. No one in sight. But down the street, he spotted a group of black teenagers walking to school. "Hey! You! Stop right there!" he barked, hand on his weapon. The teens froze. "We didn't do nothing," one boy stammered. Murdoch ordered them against the wall. No cause, no explanation, just force. What he did not know was that Caleb had set the whole scene. A fake radio call, a hidden camera mounted in the rain gutter, everything. Murdoch's tone, the teens' confusion, the unnecessary roughness, was captured in crisp detail. By noon, an anonymous tip had placed the video on an internal affairs desk. It was Murdoch's third complaint in 2 weeks. That evening, Frank sat at his kitchen table, tea in hand. The clock ticked softly. A wedding gift from Evelyn's parents, 40 years earlier. Through the window, he noticed a black cruiser rolling slowly past. Lights off. Third night in a row. He closed the curtains, locked the doors. The bruises on his face had faded, but the feeling of being watched had not. Then, glass shattered. Frank rushed to the living room. A brick lay on the floor. Attached to it was a note. "Your mouth got your son killed once. Do not let it happen again." Frank stared at the message, heart pounding. Caleb was not dead. They must have meant to scare him. But the message was clear. Someone knew Caleb was back, and they were watching. The next morning, Frank went to a legal aid event at the local college. He waited until the panel ended, then approached a young woman. "Miss Holloway?" he asked gently. She turned. Recognition flashed in her eyes. "Mr. Lewis, I know who you are." "I need help," he said quietly. She nodded. "Let's talk." Neither of them noticed the janitor nearby. Cap pulled low, mop in hand, listening. This war was growing, but so was the resistance. "That is why I am here," Frank said quietly. "I need legal help." But the precinct made it clear. Filing a complaint will only bring more trouble. Nana Holloway's expression hardened. "They threatened you?" "Not directly," Frank replied, and pulled the brick note from his coat. She took it with trembling hands, eyes scanning the threat. Her fingers paused. "This mentions your son," Frank nodded, his voice thick. "My boy Caleb. We have not spoken in years, but he is very much alive. At least he was, last I knew." Nana looked around the now empty lecture hall. Her voice lowered. "This is serious, Mr. Lewis. Come with me. My friend Spencer is a law student. He might help us understand your options." As they walked down the hall, they passed a custodian pushing a mop. Cap pulled low, eyes down, but his movements were just slow enough to keep him within earshot. Beneath the city, in the crumbling shadows of an abandoned subway tunnel, another conversation was taking place. This one, far more dangerous. A man known only as Ghost, slammed, an informant against a graffiti-scarred wall. Silver hair, expensive watch, scarred knuckles. "I know he is back," Ghost hissed. "Caleb Lewis, in my city." I do not know anything," the man gasped. He was a former Army Ranger, one who had served beside Caleb years ago. "We ran ops for 8 years, Ghost snapped. "I protected him, covered his tracks. He does not get to bring a personal war into my world." The informant choked out. "If he does not want to be found, you won't find him." Ghost released his grip. The man crumpled, gasping. "Everyone can be found," Ghost said coldly. "Everyone has a weakness." He adjusted his suit jacket with military precision. And Lewis just had a brick thrown through his father's window. Across town, Melanie Parker sat in the cluttered office of the Independent Voice. The walls, closing in with data, property records, police reports, city contracts. Her computer glowed with maps, links, and one name rising through them all. Vanguard Shield. Her phone rang, a secure line. "I found something," she said immediately. Vanguard is not just supplying the police. They are building citizen profiles, running surveillance. They have military contracts overseas. On the other end, Caleb's voice came low and sharp. "How deep does it go?" "Deep enough that when I filed a records request, Homeland Security showed up at my door, warned me. National security implications. They are watching you now." "Probably," Melanie said. "But this is bigger than your father." "I know," Caleb replied. "But it starts with him." That same night, on the south side of the city, 15-year-old Jamal Washington walked home from basketball practice. Hoodie up, headphones in, the chill of night biting through his sleeves. He spotted flashing lights in the reflection of a store window and froze. A cruiser. Officer Blake Murdoch stepped out, hand on his gun. "Take those headphones off, kid. Let me see some ID. I'm just walking home," Jamal stammered. "I'm 15. ID, now." "I do not have—" Murdoch grabbed him, spun him toward the wall. "What did I do?" Jamal cried. "You matched the description of a suspect," Murdoch said, though no call had gone out. As he patted the boy down, the cruiser's dashboard cam suddenly blinked off. In Jamal's back pocket, his phone activated silently, remotely, triggered from a car parked across the street. Then came the whisper, "You tell your friends, your family. Anyone gives us trouble, they will wish they hadn't. We are cleaning up the streets." Every word, every motion, captured perfectly. By morning, the video would land on Melanie's desk and in the hands of Internal Affairs. The following day, Dana Rivas sat in her car outside Melanie's office, clutching a flash drive like it might burn her skin. 3 years on the force had brought her to this moment. The recordings on the drive were damning. Holloway ordering someone make an example of Frank Lewis. Murdoch bragging about roughing up kids. Cold talk about targeting community organizers. And that distorted voice still echoed in her head. "You still have time to choose a side." She took a deep breath and walked into the office. 20 minutes later, she came out with empty hands and a heavy heart. There was no going back. That night, a knock came at Frank's back door. He grabbed the baseball bat he now kept nearby. "Who is it?" he called. "It's me, Pop." Frank froze. He knew that voice. He opened the door slowly. Caleb stood there, 38 years old, face hardened by sun and war, eyes older than his years. For a long moment, neither spoke. "You gonna invite me in?" Caleb asked softly. Frank stepped aside. They sat in the kitchen, the same room where their last fight had exploded years ago. Frank put on the kettle. "You saw what happened," Frank said. "I did. You should have been here." "I should have," Caleb admitted. "I had bad reasons for staying away." "You still got your mother's teapot," he added, glancing around. "Some things," Frank said, pouring tea, "you do not replace. Why did you disappear, son?" "The war never ended for me. I brought home things I could not bring into this house. I thought silence would protect you. So instead, you gave me nothing. I thought that was better," Caleb's said. Frank's hand shook slightly as he lifted his mug, and for the first time in 4 years, they talked. "What changed?" Frank asked softly. Caleb's eyes darkened. "They put their hands on you." Frank studied his son's face. That calm, measured voice, the same look he had seen on other soldiers. Men standing on the edge of violence, held back only by a thin thread of control. "What are you planning, Caleb?" "Justice. There are proper channels, like the complaint you filed," Caleb interrupted. "The one they threatened you for?" Frank had no answer. His silence said enough. "I will not let them hurt you again," Caleb said. "Or anyone else." Before Frank could respond, a faint noise echoed from the front porch. Caleb raised a hand, motioning his father to stay back. He moved through the house like a shadow. When he returned, he held another note. This one read, "Keep your mouth shut, or next time it won't be just a brick." Frank saw his son's expression shift, calm giving way to steel. The soldier had returned. "They have no idea who they are threatening," Caleb said quietly. That night, long after Caleb slipped away without saying where he was staying, the precinct door received a message of its own. One nail, one sheet of paper. "Your sins are numbered." At 6 a.m., headlines exploded across the city. "Corruption in blue. Police tied to private military contractor by Melanie Parker, The Independent." The article was a bombshell, powered by Dana Rivas's secret recordings, leaked documents, and Melanie's meticulous work. It exposed everything. Altered arrest reports, erased footage, and a direct connection between Captain Jerry Holloway and a shadowy private firm, Vanguard, Shield, with international ties and a history of military abuse. By noon, the story had gone national. By evening, crowds gathered outside the precinct, signs raised high, voices rising louder than sirens. Inside, Captain Holloway hurled his phone across the room. "This is a coordinated attack," he shouted during an emergency meeting. "Lies. from disgruntled traitors trying to dismantle law and order. The officers in the room shifted. Some had seen the reports. Some had heard the leaked tapes. Holloway ordering enforcement focused on neighborhoods that opposed Vanguard's shield. His voice, his orders. "But sir," a younger officer started, "the recordings, they sound real." "Doctored," Holloway snapped, slamming a button. A grainy military file photo appeared on the screen. "This man," he growled, "is Caleb Lewis, former Green Beret, mentally unstable. He is spreading disinformation, targeting officers, and acting as a domestic terrorist." At the back of the room, Dana Rivas remained silent. Her stomach twisted. She had covered her tracks well, but Holloway had reach. He was dangerous. And now he had a target. That night Dana returned home, but something was wrong. The door was cracked. The lock splintered. Inside, chaos, papers strewn, furniture overturned. Her laptop, gone. On the bathroom mirror, scrawled in her own lipstick, "Traitors bleed heart pounding." Dana grabbed a bag, tucked her backup weapon into her coat, and fled. There was only one person she trusted now. Across town, Nana Holloway watched her father's press conference. He stood surrounded by microphones, cool as ever. "We are pursuing a rogue sniper with ties to extremist groups," he said. "We will bring him to justice." Nana switched off the television. The man in the photo, Caleb Lewis, was the son of the bus driver her father's officer had assaulted. The threads were coming together. Her phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello. Nana, it's Officer Rivas. I need help. Someone broke into my apartment. I think it was Blake, or someone working for your father. Where are you?" "Maple and 7th. The diner." "Stay there. I am coming." On the city's edge, in the industrial zone, Caleb Lewis received a message through his secure line. Police chatter. Gang activity reported at Westbrook factory. Murdoch responding. Caleb allowed himself a grim smile. The bait had been taken. The abandoned factory had been prepared over 2 days, controlled entries, disorienting sound traps, and carefully placed lighting. Vantage points lined the upper floors, a hunter's ground. Built by a master, Blake Murdoch arrived with backup. 2 patrol cars behind him. Peterson, west entrance. Sanders, Doc. "I am going in the front." His voice carried false confidence. Flashlight out, weapon drawn, Murdoch stepped into darkness. Inside, he moved deeper. Strange sounds echoed, shadows darted. His backup radios went silent. Suddenly, light. Emergency flood lamps. Then, blackout. Then, the T shot. 1 round. Not into his body. Into his weapon. The service pistol shattered in Murdoch's hand. Glass and steel slicing his skin. Panicked, he pulled his backup and fired blindly, screaming threats into empty air. Outside, civilians ducked for cover. Cameras rolled. The wild shots pierced metal walls and shattered windows. By the time backup reached him, Murdoch was curled in a corner. Weapon gone. Hands bleeding. Eyes wide with fear. 3 rooftops away, Caleb disassembled his rifle. Calm. Controlled. "Message received. I could have ended you. I chose not to." Back at headquarters, Holloway smashed his fist into the wall. On the phone, he barked into a secure line. "I do not care about protocols. This ends now. I want the full Vanguard team activated." "Now," Holloway barked into the phone. "This is exactly the situation we prepared for." Within hours, black SUVs with tinted windows and no plates appeared across the city. Men in tactical gear, stripped of any police insignia, set up checkpoints in key neighborhoods. Above them, drones hovered, tracking protests, scanning crowds. The city no longer felt like home. It felt like a war zone. That evening, in the back office of Channel 8 News, Melanie Parker leaned across the desk towards Sarah Wilson, an old college friend and now a lead producer. "I need 10 minutes of airtime," Melanie said. "Live. Unedited." Sarah shook her head. "I can't do that, Mel. Not with the pressure coming down from the mayor's office. They want us to tone everything down." "What if I have footage? Clear proof Murdoch fired into a public street. What if I have Holloway on tape, ordering officers to silence protesters?" Sarah froze. Her expression changed. "How solid is it?" "Bulletproof." Sarah hesitated, then sighed. 5 minutes. That is all I can give you. And if anyone asks, I We'll say you blackmailed me, Melanie smiled. Just like college. At 6:35 p.m., the segment aired. No warning, no intro, just raw footage. Blake Murdoch firing wildly into the night. Then, Holloway's voice, cold and calculated. Make examples of anyone who pushes back against Vanguard's shield. The feed cut, after exactly 3 minutes. But it was too late. The story had broken free. Social media exploded. Protests doubled overnight. The streets filled with chants of justice for Frank and no private police. At home, Nana Holloway confronted her father in his study. He was mid-call, issuing clipped orders. I do not care how you do it. Find Rivas. Shut her up. He looked up, startled to see Nana standing in the doorway. You should not be here, he said. Is it true? She asked. Did you order Murdoch to target Frank Lewis? You are listening to lies and edited propaganda. I heard the recording, she said, voice tight. Your voice. Holloway's face darkened. You do not understand what it takes to keep a city from burning. Innocent people, Dad? Elderly bus drivers? This is your solution? There are no innocents, only those who understand what is coming, and those who must be shown. She stepped back. What happened to protect and serve? Grow up, Nana. That is a slogan. Power comes from control, and control requires force. Vanguard is the future. A new model of order, one that will spread across the country. No, she whispered. It is not security, it is occupation. What Holloway did not know was that her phone, tucked into her pocket, had been recording everything. By morning, Melanie would have the file. That same night, tragedy struck. Rico, the young mechanic who had once smiled at Frank from his driveway, was walking home from a late shift when a van with blacked-out windows pulled up. Men in plain clothes grabbed him and dragged him inside. Hours later, he was found in an alley, bruised, bleeding, arm broken. A note was stapled to his shirt. Stay away from Frank Lewis and his journalist friends. At the hospital, Frank sat, at Rico's bedside, guilt and rage warring inside him. The boy's face was swollen, his voice a whisper. Mr. Lewis. They asked about Melanie, about the videos. I didn't say anything. Frank squeezed his hand. You were braver than anyone should ever have to be. As he walked out of the hospital, Frank's mind was clear. Enough was enough. The next afternoon, a hastily organized press conference formed on the steps of City Hall. At the center stood Frank Lewis, flanked by Melanie Parker and Nana Holloway. Before him, reporters, activists, citizens. My name is Frank Lewis, he began. I have driven a bus in this city for 30 years. I am a veteran, a father. He paused, touching the fading bruise on his lip. Last week, I was assaulted by police for protecting a mother and her child. They thought I would stay silent. They thought an old black man would bow his head. He looked directly into the cameras. They were wrong. The crowd grew still. My son is not a terrorist, but I promise you, if you keep hurting people, he will not be the only one coming. For you. He stood taller than he had in years. This city belongs to the people, not to private armies, not to corrupt officers, not to men like Captain Holloway. The next morning, the city woke to an uneasy quiet. Outside City Hall, news, vans lined the street, protesters chanted, signs waved. Justice for Frank. End Vanguard now. Mayor Harrison made a short, vague statement. We take these allegations seriously. We ask for calm as we review the situation. But no one was calm. Inside his modest home, Frank sat watching coverage on mute. His phone had not stopped ringing. Journalists, veterans, activists. He answered none of them. A knock startled him. He peeked through the curtain. Nana stood on the porch. Alone. You shouldn't be here, he said. I know, she replied. They're watching me too. My own father has people following me. She stepped inside. Is Caleb here? Frank shook his head. He comes and goes, like a ghost. Well, she said, we need him. Dana's gone completely underground. Frank said nothing, but his eyes said everything. The next move was coming. After they ransacked her place, she is terrified, Nana said. Frank leaned forward. What exactly did your father say? Nana's voice hardened. Enough to know he does not believe in law anymore. He talked about control, about force. About Vanguard's shield expanding across the country. She lowered her voice. He mentioned something called Phase 2. Whatever it is, it has started. As if on cue, Frank's old police scanner crackled to life, an artifact from his neighborhood watch days. The codes were clipped. Fast. Strategic assets. Secure zones. Unmarked units moving into place. By noon, it was no longer hidden. Black. SUVs with armed men appeared across the city. No badges, no insignias, just weapons and orders. Surveillance drones buzzed overhead, no longer disguised as traffic monitoring. The occupation had begun. Across town, in an abandoned mechanics garage, Caleb Lewis stood before a wall covered in maps and intelligence. Each Vanguard shield location was marked, every operative catalogued, timetables, patrol patterns, drone paths, all tracked with surgical precision. In Caleb's mind, these were not officers. They were combatants. His encrypted phone buzzed, a message from Ree, his former tech specialist. South District Youth Center marked as Insurgent HQ, raid at 1500 hours. Caleb froze. The youth center, where Nana volunteered, where Rico taught kids to fix engines. A peaceful hub suddenly branded a threat. This was a pay. No coincidence. It was provocation. Across the street from the center, Officer Blake Murdoch crouched behind a wall. His hands trembled as he shoved a backpack into a ventilation duct. Illegal weapons, radical flyers, planted evidence. He thought he was alone, but Caleb watched from above. Scope steady, finger still. He could have ended it, one round. But Frank's voice echoed in his mind. If you become like them, you lose. Instead, he snapped photos, sent them to Melanie with a single message. Raid coming. Get the kids out. Melanie Parker's day had begun with threats. Her editor was pressured to suspend her. Her building received a bomb threat. She was now working from her car when Caleb's message came through. She had less than 15 minutes. She called everyone she knew at the youth center, then took a gamble. She called the precinct directly and left a message for Officer Dana Rivas. Murdoch is planting evidence. Stop the raid. It was a long shot, but it worked. When Vanguard arrived, the youth center was empty. Staff and children, safely gone. What they did find was a live stream, broadcasting their breach live to thousands. Faces exposed, weapons drawn, no threat in sight. The raid backfired instantly. Public outrage doubled. But Holloway responded not with retreat, but escalation. New restrictions were announced by nightfall. Curfews, no gatherings, expanded checkpoints. This was no longer about order. This was war. That night, Melanie met a source in a downtown parking garage. He claimed to have Vanguard Shield's internal documents. The location was exposed, but she was out of options. She waited on the third level. Footsteps echoed. Wrong direction, wrong number. 3 men appeared. No uniforms. Military posture. Eyes cold. They surrounded her. Melanie Parker, one said flatly. You're coming with us. Her fingers brushed the pepper spray in her coat. I do not think so, she said, voice calm. The leader stepped closer, then dropped, screaming, blood pouring from his knee. The others spun around, but before they could aim, they collapsed. 2 silent shots to non-lethal points. From behind a pillar, Caleb emerged like smoke. You came, Melanie breathed. You were stupid to come alone, Caleb said, zip-tying the men. I had no choice. There is always a choice, Mel, he said quietly. That is what makes us different from them. Back at Frank's house, tension boiled. You are escalating a war, Frank said. These people have power. You cannot disappear afterward, like you did overseas. You think I do not know that? Caleb snapped. This is not about you anymore, Pop. They are testing a domestic control system. If it works here, it spreads. And you think you can stop it alone? That is not justice. That is vengeance. Caleb's fist hit the counter. Then what is your solution? More forms? More silence? Frank stood his ground. We build something they cannot erase. Truth. Community. If you become like them, you lose. Caleb's voice dropped, cold as steel. If I become like them, they will never see me coming. The silence between them was thick. Then, a knock at the door. Caleb moved fast, weapon ready. Frank raised a hand. Wait. He opened the door. A tall man stood there, graying. Temples. Quiet authority. Mr. Lewis, he said. My name is Ree Blackwood. I am an old friend of your son's. Frank looked back. Caleb nodded once. It was time. Once inside Frank's home, Ree Blackwood moved with quiet precision, setting up a case of equipment near the living room window. Signal jammers, frequency blockers, spectrum sweepers. Only when the devices confirmed they were alone did he speak freely. I have been helping Caleb remotely, Ree said. But things have escalated. Vanguard's encrypted chatter is filled with references to Phase 2, something they are calling urban pacification exercises. His tone darkened. I have seen this before, overseas, where police and military blend into one force overnight. Oantes, you get into their system? Caleb asked. I can. That is why I am here. But I need proximity to their main server hub downtown. Once I breach it, I will be exposed. I will be burned. Frank sat in silence as two former soldiers spoke in a language of signals, tactics, and risks. He felt pride in his son's precision, but also fear. The world had changed in ways he could barely recognize, but the rules, power, and control, and those willing to stand against both. The next morning, a breakthrough came from an unexpected voice. Officer Dana Rivas appeared on a nationally streamed podcast known for exposing police abuse. For 45 minutes, she spoke with clarity and courage. Holloway ordered Murdoch to make an example of Frank Lewis, she said. A bus driver, a veteran, a man doing nothing but protecting a mother and child. That was when I realized it was no longer about law, it was about fear. Her words rippled across the internet. I Rode with Frank trended within the hour. Communities that once felt isolated were now united, and Dana became a symbol of conscience and a target. Inside the precinct, Blake Murdoch's grip on reality fractured. During a tactical meeting, as Holloway discussed curfews and extended powers, Blake exploded. He is watching us, Murdoch shouted. Lewis has eyes everywhere. He could have killed me at the warehouse. He was playing with me. Get control of yourself, Holloway snapped. We are at war, Blake raved. You are worried about optics, and he is hunting us, Blake stormed out. I will take the fight to all of them. Lewis, that journalist, every one of them. After he left, Holloway summoned his inner circle. He is a liability, Holloway said. But he may still be useful. He slid a paper across the table, a list of names. Melanie Parker, Nena Holloway, Frank Lewis. Surveillance only, for now. We will handle them when the timing is right. What Holloway did not know was that one of his trusted officers was leaking everything to Rico and his tech-savvy crew. By sundown, the list was posted online. The backlash was immediate. That night, Caleb moved. 3 Vanguard Shield safe houses across the city, used for planning and equipment storage, were simultaneously disabled, lights out, communications jammed, entrances sealed. No one was hurt, but the message left behind was unmistakable. This war has rules. Break them, and I won't. Caleb was not just striking, he was warning them. On the top floor of a high-rise downtown, Holloway stood before a wall of surveillance screens. The city blinked back at him in a dozen camera feeds. Beside him stood a man known only as Ghost, silver-haired, impeccably dressed, ice behind the eyes. Your son is becoming quite a nuisance, Ghost said casually. He is not my son, Holloway snapped. Just a problem to eliminate. You have had weeks to eliminate him. We are handling it. Ghost turned toward him, expression unreadable. He was trained by the best, including me. Never forget that. Across town, Melanie Parker pieced together something deeper than corruption. She huddled in a secure office with Dana and Nena, documents spread like a battlefield before them. This goes back 15 years, she said. Afghanistan. Holloway served under Ghost. There was an incident in a village. Maidan Shah. Civilian deaths. No charges. The case was buried. And then Vanguard Shield was born, Dana added. Using the same men. Nena stared, pale. My father was already a captain when I was 10. He never spoke of this. This city, Melanie said, was always the test, a prototype for blending private military with public policing. We are the experiment, Dana whispered. A knock froze them. Nena approached the door, hand near her waist. It was Rico, arm in a sling, face tight with urgency. They are moving on Frank's house, he said. Right now. Despite curfew, Frank Lewis sat on his porch, alone, quiet, watching. His decision to speak had broken something open in the city, but it also brought old wounds to the surface. In 1979, Frank had testified against 2 officers who beat a handcuffed teen behind a store. The threats came fast: dead animals on his porch, slashed tires, late-night calls to his wife. He had done the right thing and paid the price. He left his job, left the city, took his young family and disappeared. For 40 years, he had kept his head down, believed silence was safety. But now, the silence was no longer protection. It was permission. And Frank Lewis was done giving it. Frank Lewis had spent a lifetime choosing silence over justice. Not because he lacked courage, but because he believed silence might protect those he loved. Caleb from war, Evelyn from fear, his community from retaliation. But silence had not saved his son from bloodshed, had not kept his neighbors from being buried beneath uniforms that no longer served the people. Maybe, Frank thought, the real cost was staying quiet. His phone rang. "Dad, get out of the house." "Now," Caleb's voice urged. "Blake is coming." Frank did not hesitate. He grabbed the bag he had packed days earlier, just in case, and slipped out the back door. His old training kicked in. He moved low, silent, vanishing between houses. At that same moment, headlights cut across his front porch. A door slammed. Officer Blake Murdoch stormed toward the door, gun drawn, sweat glistening on his brow. His movements were wild, twitching. When no one answered, he kicked in the door. But the house was empty. Frank was already gone. Across the city, in a darkened back room wired with signal scramblers and radio blockers, Ree Blackwood worked furiously. His fingers flew across keyboards as he tunneled into Vanguard Shield's encrypted systems. "Almost there," he murmured into his comms. "Their servers are tough, but I found a blind spot." The door exploded inward. Tactical boots stomped across the floor, rifles raised. Ree froze. "Well," he said, raising his hands. "That was faster than I expected." The lead operative removed his mask. Ghost, still polished, still cold. Ree Blackwood. Best tech mind I ever trained. Now working against me. "I'd say I finally chose the right side," Ree replied. Ghost's smile was thin. "Secure him and his gear. We are sending a message." Hours later, Caleb received a video on his encrypted line. Ree, bloodied, tied to a chair. Ghost's voice off-screen. "Tell him." Ree looked into the camera. "Do not come, Caleb. Whatever they want, it is a trap." A gun pressed to his head. A scream. A shot. Caleb's expression did not change, but his hand clenched the phone until his knuckles turned white. He called Melanie. "They have Ree. They want me to bring my father to the Harborside warehouse. Midnight." "It is a setup," Melanie said. "I know. So what is the plan?" "I need you. Naina, Dana, anyone you trust. It is time to end this." At that same moment, Dana Rivas stepped out of a packed town hall, feeling, for the first time in weeks, like hope was possible. She had spoken openly about police reform. The crowd had cheered. For a moment, she believed she had turned a corner. She was halfway to her car when the shot struck her shoulder. Silenced, clean, efficient. Dana spun, collapsing to the pavement as people screamed. Through the haze of pain, she caught a glimpse. Hoodie, broad frame, fast retreating. "Blake!" she gasped to the responding officer. It was Blake. At the hospital, Frank was the first to arrive. He sat beside her bed, watching her breathe. Her courage stirred. Something in him, a part of himself he had buried for decades. "You were braver than most soldiers I have known," he whispered. "Rest now. We will finish what you started." In his room, Rico worked through the pain. His arm was broken, his ribs bruised, but his mind was sharp. He had become the digital heart of the resistance, relaying messages, compiling intel, keeping hope alive. He cracked into Blake Murdoch's cloud storage. It was sloppy, too easy. Inside, the hit list, photos, addresses, strategies. Frank Lewis at the top. Priority 1. Tonight. Rico posted it online with a message. "This is who's hunting us. This is what we're fighting." The city erupted. By nightfall, Protesters surrounded the precinct. Ordinary citizens, teachers, shopkeepers, grandmothers, stood shoulder to shoulder demanding answers. Holloway's private army could not arrest an entire city. And then Caleb spoke. His coded message echoed through scanners and emergency frequencies. You have one final chance to surrender your corruption. If not, justice comes before sunrise. In the shadows of an abandoned church, Frank Lewis prayed, not for safety, but for wisdom, for strength to stand, not run, for his son to find his way home without becoming the very thing he fought against. I am sorry I wasn't there when you came back, Frank whispered into the empty air. I was afraid of your anger, because I recognized it. I buried mine so long I forgot it was still alive. He did not hear footsteps, but a voice answered, softly from the back of the church. You did what you thought was right. You always have. Frank turned. Caleb stood there. No gear, no rifle, just jeans and a sweatshirt. Not a ghost, not a soldier. His son. They have Caleb said. Frank rose. I know, he replied. And this time, he did not hesitate. They want me to bring you to them, Caleb said. Frank's gaze did not flinch. And are you? No, Caleb replied. We are not going to them. We are bringing the fight to them. But I need to know. Are you with me? Frank stood tall. Not just me. All of us. As the first light of dawn crept over the rooftops, Caleb prepared. He had studied Ghost's methods, Holloway's pride, Murdoch's unraveling mind. But what he had not expected was how the city itself had changed. The people had changed. They were no longer hiding. They were standing. The same surveillance meant to crush them was now turned outward, exposing the very system that built it. Frank had been right all along. Power was not in weapons or war. It was in standing firm, in truth, in facing the light. Caleb sent one final message to his father. Whatever happens today, I am proud to be your son. City Hall had never seen a crowd like this. The chambers overflowed, the hallways flooded, the steps outside packed with people. Frank Lewis walked slowly to the podium. On either side stood Melanie Parker and Nana Holloway, an elderly bus driver and a journalist, the faces of a movement. Frank adjusted the microphone. His voice was quiet, but every ear strained to hear. I am not a politician. I have never led protests or marched in parades. I drove a bus. I minded my business. But when Officer Murdoch threw me to the ground, he did not just assault me. He shattered the trust between this city's people and those sworn to protect them. The council shifted in their seats. Tension pulsed. Captain Holloway has turned his precinct into a private army, Frank continued. I formally request his immediate suspension pending a full investigation. A councilwoman raised her hand. Mr. Lewis, with all due respect, we need more than allegations. From the back, Nana stepped forward. She held up her phone. This might help. With one tap, her father's voice filled the room. Vanguard Shield is the future. Sometimes, examples need to be made. Gasps, murmurs, then, cheers. The mayor stood, voice shaking. In light of this evidence, I am suspending Captain Gerald Holloway, effective immediately, pending investigation. Outside, the crowd erupted. In a sterile control room, Holloway watched the news break, his jaw clenched, his hands curled into fists. They think this changes anything? He growled. By the time their investigation starts, Phase 2 will already be in place. He turned. Deploy all units. Full tactical protocol. Secure every strategic point by midnight. Ghost, watching from the corner, raised an eyebrow. You are crossing a line, Jerry. You think Washington will not notice? By the time they do, Holloway said, eyes glowing with zeal, it will be too late. As night fell, the occupation began. Armored carriers, black SUVs, tactical teams, drones overhead. They moved with precision. But so did the people. Rico's network had tracked their every move. As Vanguard deployed, they were met not with gunfire, but cameras, live streams, roadblocks built from bicycles and protest signs, streets filled with coordinated defiance. In the shadows, Caleb moved, silent, strategic. This was not a firefight. This was disruption. Power lines, water mains, signal jammers. He dismantled Vanguard without a single bullet fired. By midnight, the occupation was in chaos. Command links severed. Units blind and scattered. Every misstep broadcast to the world. At Frank's house, the final confrontation took shape. The lights were off. Curtains drawn. Officer Blake Murdoch crept toward the door, weapon raised, face slick with sweat. Holloway was finished. The city had turned. But Blake still clung to one mission. He kicked the door in. "Lewis," he barked. "I know you're in here." A calm voice from the kitchen stopped him. "I am right here, son." Frank Lewis sat at the table. An old revolver rested near his hand, untouched. "You are alone?" Blake asked, stepping forward. "Just me," Frank answered. "You ruined everything. You and your terrorist son." "My son is not a terrorist. He is a soldier who recognized the enemy." Blake's hands trembled. "Shut up! You threw me down not to protect the law, but to show power," Frank said. "And I questioned it. That is what you cannot stand." Blake screamed and lunged forward, gun pressed to Frank's forehead. "I could end you and call it self-defense." Frank stayed still. "The city is watching now." A floorboard creaked behind Blake. He spun. Caleb stood in the doorway, weapon aimed. "Drop it," Caleb said, voice steady. "Now. They want me to bring you to them," Caleb said. Frank's eyes were steady. "And are you?" "No," Caleb replied. "We are bringing the fight to them. But I need to know, you are with me?" Frank stood, voice firm. "Not just me. All of us." As dawn neared, Caleb ran final checks. He knew Ghost's cold precision, Holloway's arrogance, and Murdoch's unraveling mind. But what he could not predict was how the city had changed. People were no longer afraid. Surveillance cameras, once used to monitor citizens, were now tools of truth. Communities that had once been divided now stood shoulder to shoulder. Frank had been right. The real power was not in weapons, it was in standing. Caleb sent one last message to his father. "Whatever happens today, I am proud to be your son." City Hall overflowed. Inside, outside, down the steps, citizens stood packed for the emergency council meeting. Frank Lewis stepped to the podium, flanked by Melanie Parker, a bus driver and a reporter, now the face of something greater. "I am just a citizen," Frank said. "Not an activist, not a politician. I drove a bus, I minded my business. But when Officer Murdoch threw me to the ground, that was not just an assault. That was a message. And I am here to say, we heard it, and we are answering." A council member hesitated. "Mr. Lewis, these are serious accusations. We need more than words." From the audience, Nana Holloway stood. "Maybe this will help." She played the recording of her father. Sometimes examples need to be made. Vanguard Shield is the future. Gasps. Silence. Then the mayor stood. "In light of this new evidence, Captain Gerald Holloway is hereby suspended pending federal investigation." The crowd outside erupted in cheers. Inside Vanguard headquarters, Holloway watched the broadcast. Officers were leaving, walking out, abandoning him. "Deploy full protocol," he snapped. "Secure every point by midnight." Ghost, watching from the shadows, warned him. "You're crossing a line, Jerry. The feds will notice." "By the time they do," Holloway whispered, "we will already own this city." Armored trucks rolled. Drones circled. Tactical teams fanned out. But the people were ready. Rico's network had mapped every vehicle's route. As Vanguard deployed, they found streets flooded not with weapons, but with phones, with banners, with voices. And in the alleys and rooftops, Caleb moved like wind. He dismantled squads, not with bullets, but with brilliance. Power cut, radios jammed, streets blocked. By midnight, Vanguard was blind. At Frank's house, Blake Murdoch moved like a man possessed. The house was dark, quiet. He kicked in the door. "Lewis," he screamed. A voice answered from the kitchen. "I am right here, son." Frank sat at the table, an old revolver near his hand, but untouched. "You're alone?" Blake asked, weapon shaking. "Just me," Frank said calmly. "You and your terrorist son ruined everything. My son saw the enemy on home soil. That is not terrorism. That is clarity." Blake's hand trembled. "Shut up. You threw me down to feel strong," Frank said. "But strength is not power. Strength is standing when you are told to kneel," Blake snapped, pressing the barrel to Frank's forehead. I could end you right now. Frank did not move, and the whole city would see who you really are. A floorboard creaked. Blake spun. Caleb stood, weapon raised. Drop it. The deadly calm in Caleb's voice froze Blake in place. Caleb, Frank said, stepping between them. This is not how it ends. He would have killed you, maybe. But if we kill him, we become what they fear. The three men stood in a perfect triangle. Then Frank stepped forward. It is over, Blake. The city knows. You still have a choice. Outside, sirens wailed. Blake's arm fell. The gun hit the floor. Moments later, officers placed him in cuffs. Neighbors' livestream caught the image. Frank Lewis standing tall in his doorway, calm, unarmed, unshaken. Melanie. Parker led cameras to the precinct steps. Captain Holloway, she called. You are suspended. Federal agents are en route. Will you surrender? Inside, Holloway's world was collapsing. He stormed outside, only to find hundreds waiting. His daughter among them. Dad! Nena called, tears in her eyes. Please, it is over. He ran. Down a side street, into a waiting car. He yanked the door open. Drive! The driver turned. Caleb Lewis stared back. Hello, Captain. Holloway reached for his weapon, but Caleb was faster. Going to kill me? Holloway sneered. No, Caleb said, placing the gun, unloaded, on the dash. I am giving you a choice. Caleb turned his back. Holloway lunged. The gun clicked. Empty. In one move, Caleb disarmed him again, snapping his wrist. You had your chance, Caleb said. Now you get to watch everything fall. By sunrise, Vanguard Shield was finished. There, trucks stood abandoned. Federal agents swarmed headquarters. Holloway, Murdoch, others, arrested, and Caleb Lewis disappeared once more. Frank sat on his porch, coffee in hand, the street alive with laughter and sidewalk chalk. Peace, at last. The mail carrier approached with a single envelope. Inside, a note in Caleb's handwriting. You stood taller than I ever did. I am proud to be your son. 6 months later. At Memorial Hospital, Director Dana Rivas limped down the hall. Her cane tapped with purpose. Her non-profit for police whistleblowers, thriving. Across town, Nena Holloway, now 23, led a city council campaign. Her father's legacy no longer her burden, but her reason. And in the South District, Rico Stevens cut the ribbon on a youth mechanics academy. Frank Lewis stood in the crowd, a quiet man, a hero, now seen. The city had changed, because someone finally stood. Rico stood before a packed room of students, parents, and community members. His voice was steady, his heart full. Mr. Lewis, he said, glancing at Frank in the front row, taught me that standing up for what is right is not always safe, but it is always necessary. The crowd listened in silence. This academy is for kids who need to know they matter, that they belong, that their community believes in them. Applause filled the space. Rico's dream, once nearly crushed by violence, had bloomed into something powerful because someone had dared to stand. Upstate, in a maximum security prison, Blake Murdoch sat alone, convicted swiftly, forgotten quickly. Even among inmates he was isolated. Whispers of his crimes followed him, but worse than their judgment was his fear that Caleb Lewis might still be watching. One morning, a guard handed him an envelope. No return address. Inside was a single note. There are worse things than silence. Justice knows your name now. He reported it, demanded protection, but there was no threat in the words, and no one believed him. The silence haunted him more than any cell ever could. Melanie Parker's book, Shadow of the Badge, debuted at #1. It was a scathing, beautiful account of Holloway's fall and the everyday people who brought down a machine of control. The dedication read, to Frank Lewis, who reminded us that courage often wears no uniform. At a signing event, a young reporter asked, there are rumors Caleb Lewis is overseas, helping resistance movements. Any truth to that? Melanie smiled. Caleb Lewis remains a ghost, she said. But maybe that is what some places need. Someone who moves between worlds, bringing justice where the law cannot. One crisp autumn evening, Frank sat on his repaired porch. The sounds of normal life returned. Children laughing, neighbors talking, leaves rustling. The chaos had passed, but the memory remained. Melanie had encouraged him to write, not a story of vengeance, but one of resilience. He titled it, The Man on Route 19. It was about the people, not the fight. He wrote about the nurse who never missed a shift, the boy with headphones who found purpose, the mechanic who learned to lead, a city reflected in the windows of a bus. As twilight deepened, Frank noticed a small box on his doorstep. He opened it slowly. Inside, an old bronze star with a V for valor, and a photo of Caleb in uniform, much younger, proud, and distant. The back. "I'm always watching over you, Pop." Frank stared into the dark street. He raised his mug in a silent toast to the shadows. Wherever Caleb was, Frank knew. His son was still out there, still fighting, still watching. Years later, a young boy boarded a city bus. It was named the Frank Lewis, a tribute from the Transit Authority. Near the driver's seat hung a plaque with Frank's photo and a short line about his service. The boy turned to the driver. "Who was Frank Lewis?" The driver, a middle-aged man with kind eyes, smiled. "Frank Lewis," he said, "was the bravest man I ever knew, because when the world told him to run, he stood still." The boy stared out the window, his eyes wide with wonder, as the bus pulled away from the curb. Above the city, the legend of Caleb Lewis lived on, in whispers, in stories told in barbershops, classrooms, and street corners. The ghost who appeared when the city needed him most and vanished into forgotten places. In a quiet house, Frank Lewis's memoir sat on shelves across the city. A bus driver's story, a city's turning point, a reminder that courage comes in many forms, that sometimes justice does not wear a badge or carry a rifle. Sometimes it just drives you home safely. What price do we pay for justice when the system itself becomes the threat? Frank and Caleb's journey answered not with speeches or slogans, but with something more powerful: stillness, truth, and the kind of courage that moves a city. If this story moved you, please like, subscribe, and share to help us tell more powerful stories about ordinary heroes facing extraordinary challenges.